Good afternoon.
Good
Yeah,
afternoon.
good afternoon. So I thank all of you for participating. I can see a lot of people from US, from Bangladesh, from India. So good afternoon to everybody. We'll be talking today about how to write a good paper. So obviously this is our attempt to say it is a good paper. But whether it is good or bad is decided by the other people sitting in the editorial board and in the reviewer panel. So, what I'll do is that this will be a very practical thing. We will talk about, or I will talk about my experience. When I say my experience, what is my experience? My experience as an editor, I serve 5 journal in the capacity of editor, Indian Journal of Gastroenterology as editor-in-chief, and Journal of Neurogastroenterology Motility, Digestion, which is a journal published from Europe, Journal of Digestive Endoscopy as associate editor, and Nature Review Gastroenterology and Hepatology as an advisory board member. I do extensive peer reviewing. You will not believe me. I review on an average 8 to 10 articles every week for a lot of journals. So 8 to 10 articles every week for a lot of journals, including the journal in which I serve in the capacity of associate editor or editor. And peer review helps you because if you can pick up fault in the other's paper, you expect to pick up those faults in your paper as well. But let me tell you, it is easier to pick up fault with others than to pick up fault with yourself. This is a human behavior because it is easy to pick up fault in somebody else's paper. But when you are talking about your own paper, you are emotionally so much involved, so much engaged that you don't find fault in it. So, but again, peer reviewing really helps. And experience as an author, because I published more than 300 papers, and I will talk about my practical experience, and I'm sure that it will benefit you. What happens is those who are publishing extensively, I know some in the participants, maybe the one who publish in very high impact journal. So question is, I am targeting the beginners. I am not targeting those who are who are extensively publishing themselves. Okay? Ji, Alisha, you see, somebody else started sharing his screen. Sorry, there was some technical glitch. So don't share your screen. I'm sharing my screen. Now we are targeting the beginners, but I tell you, I believe all of us are beginners. Every day we are learning on this. Now, when you want to write a paper, you follow IMRAD format today. IMRAD format. What is IMRAD format? I means introduction. M means method. R means result. And D means discussion. So in introduction, typically you answer why you want to publish this study. Why did you do this work? So introduction means why. Method is how did you do this work? Result is what did you find? And discussion is what do these mean? So these are the 4 things. Why, how, what, and what do these mean? Now we get a lot of paper where you find a very long introduction. very crisp result, this is not a good paper. So somebody starts with history, like somebody is working, let us say, with insulin. Now says insulin was first discovered by Benting and Best in so and so year, for which they received Nobel Prize and so on. Your aim is, should insulin or is insulin, should insulin be given early in the diabetes or non-insulin dependent diabetes? So now you start with a history of insulin, discovery of insulin, and then make a very long introduction. So this does not really means why. So typically look at this picture of a fish. The fish has a anterior portion or front portion which is very narrow. The back portion is narrow and the middle portion is quite heavy. So our paper should be similar. Our introduction should be short, crisp. Method and the result should be occupying the most of the paper. Discussion will gradually narrow down to one paragraph of conclusion. So that is how the paper should look like. So when you have written a paper, just take a word count. What is the word count of your introduction section? What is the word count of your result and method section? What is the word count in your discussion section? And if you find that the word count is not distributed proportionately like a fish, it is not a good paper. Okay? Now, introduction should capture the reader attention. When you submit a paper, who is your first reader? Your first reader is the editor and the peer reviewer and the editorial board member. So your first reader is the editor, editorial board member, and the peer reviewer. So therefore, introduction should be able to capture the reader's attention. But when I say capturing the reader's attention, remember one thing, that the literary writing and the scientific writing is totally different. In the literary writing, use jargon. In scientific writing, no jargon. In literary writing, you want to make complex writing. Now, in scientific writing, it should be very simple. But yet, you should be able to capture the attention of your editor, your peer reviewer, associate editor, that this is a very important piece of work. Because if you don't read the work further, maybe you are going to miss something for your journal. So begin with a thunder, but not play of English like literary writing, captures the reader's attention. Now, typically, introduction should be 2 or at most 3 paragraphs, not more than that. So in 2 or 3 paragraphs, when I want to work, let us say I'm working on a drug for a disease. Let us say I'm working for a drug for coronavirus. So the first paragraph will talk about what is the magnitude of the problem due to coronavirus, whether this is a potentially lethal infection or not. So I am trying to tell that this is a real problem. It has tremendous magnitude. It is potentially lethal. The second paragraph will talk about lacuna in the treatment of coronavirus. It will show, but don't give a lot of references, only a few references. It will say, though several drugs such as corticosteroid, remdesivir, chloroquine, ivermectin have been used in treatment of coronavirus disease, but these are either ineffective or are potentially toxic or are not based on adequate scientific evidence. Now you say, therefore, there is a need to study further on the treatment of coronavirus disease. Then in the third paragraph, I will talk about the new drug that I am referring to. I'll give biological explanation why this drug should work. I'll give some animal studies or any other evidence that may be available in the literature why I believe this drug should work. And then say, therefore we hypothesize that this drug is a potentially useful drug for treatment of coronavirus disease. Hence we aim. Then you say MA, MB, MC. This is very important. I'll give you some example maybe. Look at this. This is a study where it say a proof of concept study showing antibiotics to be more effective in irritable bowel syndrome with than without small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, a randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled trial. Look at the end of the introduction. The panel above shows the end of the introduction. And it says, accordingly, we undertook a study with the following aims: to evaluate the frequency of symptomatic response among patients with IBS with or without SIBO, to treatment with norfloxacin as compared with placebo during 6 months of follow-up, and to evaluate the efficacy of norfloxacin as compared with placebo in turning SIBO test result negative. Look at this, 2 M's, very strong M. In fact, this is the first study to show that if there is an SIBO in a patient with IBS, he is more likely to respond than if he does not have SIBO. So clearly state them that aim with clarity, with brevity, with clarity and with brevity. So hypothesis must be given in the end of the introduction, and then you must give your aim as 1 and 2 at the end of introduction. Okay. So reference the background information, like I told you, but too much reference is not good in the introduction section. Use literature search to enrich, but again, don't give 20 references in the introduction section. Introduction section should hardly have 8 to 10 references. Point out in the gap in the current scientific knowledge. For example, in this particular study that I was referring to, we'll say though antibiotic has been found to be useful in IBS, but its efficacy is to the tune of 40 to 50% only. However, all the previous studies use antibiotic irrespective of presence or absence of SIBO, and hence the low frequency of efficacy is quite expected. This is perhaps the first study in which we want to see the efficacy of antibiotic among IBS patients in relation to presence and absence of SIBO. We hypothesize that presence of SIBO will be associated with higher frequency of response to antibiotic than absence of SIBO. Accordingly, we aim to study, and then the aim that I show. State how this study would bridge the gap in the knowledge. Like there we'll say, this study will possibly help us to increase pretest probability of response of patient with IBS to antibiotic therapy. As I said earlier, it should be concise and focused. It should state the hypothesis and list the aims clearly like we have done here. Okay, so that is the introduction. Method section, often we found that in a written paper that come to us for peer review or for publication, the section of method has the maximum flaws. In fact, we only look at the reviewer comment. Is the reviewer referring to flaw in the method section or in the result section? If the flaws are in the method section, probably I will not give even major revision in that paper. You know why? Because method is the one which you cannot correct. Suppose if you are an author, method section you cannot correct. On the other hand, if somebody refers to your interpretation of the data, analysis of the result, how you have discussed your finding, this can be modified even at the revision stage. But the method is the one which you planned before the study began, and the method is the one which you executed some time ago. Let us take an example again of coronavirus, because people will be more aware of coronavirus now than anything else. Now look at this. Let us say you want to study the viral load, coronavirus load in nasopharynx of patient. And you want to see, is the high viral load in the nasopharynx of a patient associated with higher infectivity, higher probability of transmission to others than low viral. Let us say use a technology called CT value, cycle threshold value. We all know that if cycle threshold is high, the viral load is likely to be low. If cycle threshold is low, viral load is likely to be high. Now you want to submit this paper to a very high impact journal, for example, Lancet. Now, suppose somebody is an associate editor of Lancet. Obviously, they get plenty of paper, so they will obviously reject a lot of paper where there are methodological flaws which are not landmark studies. Now, what happens is a reviewer says that cycle threshold is a very indirect method of assessment of viral load. It is not the gold standard. Digital droplet PCR is the gold standard for assessment of the viral load. Hence, this author did not use the best technology to assess viral load, which might be leading to the negative result that they got. Now the paper is done. You know why? The editor will say reject it, because they use a technology and you can't really rectify at this stage, because it is very difficult to say that you have all the samples stored and the samples are really stored very well, and now you'll do digital droplet PCR again in those samples and you will rectify the point raised by the reviewer is unlikely. Therefore, the paper will be killed there. So that is the reason method section is very important. Now look at when you are writing the method, what does the editor want? What does the reviewer want? What they want is you should write in such a manner that when another person wants to do the study, he can really go line by line of your method and can be able to reproduce the study. So that means method should be so well written that one can go line by line, sentence by sentence of your method section and be able to reproduce the result. It may not be the same result as you found, but the result should come, whether negative, positive, whether contradictory, or in accordance with. So do not include result in the method section. Somebody will say, this is, I don't understand the meaning of it. What do you mean by do not include result in the method section? Because why should I include the result in the method section? We get a lot of paper where it is done. For example, we get a lot of paper where age range of the patient, along with the, let us say, standard deviation of the age, number of female patient included, male patient included, are given in the method section. Now, what is in the method? Method is the one which can be written before the study is begun. That should be in the method. So before the study was begun, in most of the situation, you did not know what will be the mean age of the patient, what will be standard deviation of age of the patient, what will be the proportion of male and female. So therefore, this should have gone to result section and not method section. So it is not that we uncommonly find this. So what you could have written before even the studies began is in the method. What you could write only after completion of the study is result. So if you remember these two sentences, you can clearly see after writing a paper, did you mix up the method and the result? If your study is retrospective, write it clearly. Because many a time authors don't want to write retrospective. You know why? Because retrospective studies have a lot of limitations. They are not the studies which usually good journal would like to take. So therefore, people tend to actually hide that. But what happens is if you hide that, and if the reviewer or the editor finds out that it looks like a retrospective study, he will be very cautious. You know why? Because he will say, if he is trying to hide this, I don't know what else he is trying to hide, which I could not even pick up. So use the term prospective very carefully. People use the term prospective very loosely. And I can tell you how we pick up whether this study is retrospective or prospective. We would simply ask a question, did you take the ethics clearance before the study was begun? And can you give us the date for the ethics clearance or ethics clearance certificate? Now, if you did not take the ethics clearance before recruiting the first patient, because in most studies, we want the study duration to be mentioned. So you'll write the study duration. Let us say you write that in your coronavirus study, you began in February. Like a study was undertaken in SGPGI Lucknow between February 2020 to July 2020. And you cannot produce an ethics certificate before February. What does it mean? This is not a prospective study. So therefore, this will not only kill this paper of yours, but maybe in future, the editor will be cautious about the papers coming from your group. Describe the data collection method in detail. You'll say, what does it mean? Like you might have said that we studied healthy volunteer. Now, how did you get those healthy volunteers? Did you advertise? Did you include student? Did you include staff member? Did you include patient relative? Let us say in case of those who do lab experiment, you said mice was used for the study. Where did you get these mice? Did you purchase them from some source? What is the source? So all these are data collection method. Specify who collected the data. That is also important. Describe the setting of the study. Define your variable. Like in some, even we like to say simple clinical variable to be described. Let us say we say death due to liver disease was defined as so and so. Death not related to liver disease was defined as so and so. Post-operative complication, you may say, the immediate post-operative complication was defined as any complication that occurred within 7 days after the surgical operation. So that is defining the variable, defining the outcome. Always give the outcome as primary outcome, what are these? Secondary outcome, what are these? A picture conveys more than 1,000 words. This I showed probably earlier also. In this picture, you see, we have clearly shown the method of the study and partly, now this only shows method of the study. So it shows that we took patient of acute gastroenteritis, we took healthy control, we evaluated them at different time point, the evaluation method, whether it is a telephonic or physical. Then we looked at who recovered completely, who developed some complication. If they develop complication, what test did we do? And then if we did some test, actually, what is the definition of disease 1 and what is the definition of disease 2? So everything is given pictorial. But remember one thing, when you use these pictures, do not take from a source, because many of the pictures available in the source actually are copyrighted. So you may face the difficulty. So what you do is, typically I have all these pictures drawn myself. You can also request your artist to draw this picture. And suppose if I have done drawing of 1%, now this percent I can use like in a pair of, or in a combination of 10% somewhere, in a combination of 20% somewhere. I can change the color of the percent so that it is my original hand drawing, but I am combining these hand drawings variably in different paper, changing their colors and so on. Method, describe the source of study subject. For example, I told you that healthy volunteer, where did you get? Specify the inclusion and exclusion criteria. And this is very, very important. Many a time, like today I was reviewing a paper. In that paper, they say Jollinger-Ellison syndrome was an exclusion criteria. So immediate question is, how did you diagnose Jollinger-Ellison syndrome? Jollinger-Ellison syndrome is not diagnosed so easily. You get multiple ulcers, peptic ulcers, but you also have to have high serum gastrin level. Maybe you may have to demonstrate the tumor. Now, what happens is, typical question is, this author very loosely used the term Jollinger-Ellison syndrome. Obviously, they could not have done, or they could not have excluded Jollinger-Ellison syndrome without doing specific investigation, and there was no mention of all this investigation. For example, if you say autonomic neuropathy was an exclusion criteria, so how did you check for autonomic neuropathy? So that is very important. Justify your sample size. Mention source of equipment and consumable. This is very commonly neglected. If it is like you are doing a kit, you are using a kit. Let us say you are using a microscope. Let us say you are using an endoscope. Now let us say you are using a CT scan. Now you have to, within bracket, tell the manufacturer name. Tell the city name, city where the company is located. Tell the country name. For example, if you are using SPSS software for your statistical analysis, don't say SPSS. It is like statistical package for social science, within bracket SPSS. Then you may say IBM. IBM is a company name. INC, Inca, USA. So it should be all mentioned there. Okay? Make the statistics easy to understand, so that statistical analysis section, you do not make unnecessary jargon so that your reader or your peer reviewer cannot understand. And justify the choice of statistical test. For example, if I say normally distributed data were compared using t-test, and non-normally distributed data were compared using a Mann-Whitney U-test. Makes sense? That means I'm justifying that I looked for normal distribution, and if the data were normally distributed, which is called parametric data, I use t-test, and if the data were not normally distributed, I use Mann-Whitney U-test. Now, already that I have told you in the previous session how to choose the statistical test. Yeah, I hope that you remember all this, but you justify this. Why did you use this statistical test? So remember while writing the paper, PICO again. PICO, I talked about when we talked about designing the study. So you ask yourself, PICO, what are my patients whom I have studied? What is the population that I have studied? What is the problem that I have studied? What is the intervention that I did? Am I looking for some prognostic factor? Am I looking for from exposure? Because many a time the study may not be interventional, but observational. But in observational study, it may be a hypothesis-driven study where you looked at an exposure, even if sort of retrospectively. You are trying to compare the intervention. So therefore, keep that in mind when you are writing. And what is your outcome measure that you want to study? Result, present your result enthusiastically. What does enthusiastic mean? It means that actually you should be clear what you want to convey. You should not be confused. For example, when I write my result, what I do is I read my method. I first read my aim. So whatever is my aim, my method should be in same chronology. If my aim was, let us say, assessing a diagnostic test in patient with flu, whether it picks up coronavirus disease. And then I want to see sensitivity and specificity of this test. So that means here I have a control population. Control population is the flu patient who do not have coronavirus. I have a study population. Study population is those who have flu-like symptoms and are coronavirus positive. Here I am evaluating a test. The test is an unique test I have, let us say, started doing. Obviously, then I need a gold standard test. So because when you are saying that coronavirus disease, you are classifying people as having COVID-19 and not having COVID-19 but ordinary flu, if you are assessing or evaluating a new test, you must have a gold standard. Ask yourself, what do I have? Do I have gold standard? I tell you, we get papers submitted to the journal where the fellow, the author did not think about what is his gold standard. Yes, you may come up with a gold standard, which is not a gold standard, iron standard. So if it is iron standard, still the paper will not be accepted because you have used a gold standard which has a very low sensitivity and low specificity. Therefore, the new test where you are saying it is false positive or true positive, really we can't rely because your gold standard itself is faulty. So that is a different matter. It is not the question of design of the study, but it is the question of what you used as a gold standard, what is available today in science as a gold standard for that particular disease. But what happens is if you did not even consider gold standard, did not even mention the gold standard, means you have a problem in understanding research methodology. Start with a major positive finding, but before that, describe your population. That means, one, I spoke about study subject. So you describe your study subject. You typically, if you are talking about coronavirus disease and control, will say that of the 246 patients included in this study, in the result section, first I'll say 100 turn out to have COVID-19 and the remaining had usual flu. The patient with COVID-19 had comparable age and gender than those with ordinary flu. The patient of COVID-19, demographically, the frequency of urban and rural dwelling was similar than the ordinary flu. So that I'm trying to see that if you are doing a case control design, I know this is not the case control design, it is evaluating a diagnostic test. But when you have a case control design, I want to know whether your cases are comparable to control. Let us say you are studying Helicobacter pylori infection among patients with peptic ulcer disease. Now your peptic ulcer patient are older, let us say their mean age is 28 years. Let us say your control mean age is 12 years. And statistically, they are different. The two ages are statistically different. We all know peptic ulcer, a Helicobacter pylori infection, frequency increases with age. Now, if you took an older population with peptic ulcer and younger control, then I expect that Helicobacter pylori will be more frequent in older population than younger population. It may have nothing to do with peptic ulcer. So that's why you compare, first present the data of your population on which the study has been done. Then what happens is look at your method. So the method, whatever chronology is you used in the method, use the same chronology to present the result. And when you talk about what should be the chronology in the method, you look at your aim. If your primary aim was something, the method should also first talk about that primary aim and not secondary aim. For example, if my primary aim was response of antibiotic on IBS symptom, and the secondary aim was whether hydrogen breath test becomes negative with antibiotic compared to placebo, in the method section, I must not talk about hydrogen breath test first. Because the reason is that is my secondary aim. My primary aim is response to symptom or response of symptom to treatment. So use simple, easy to read. Number of tables and figures should be limited. Most journal don't allow more than 7 and table and figure together. So if you are using 6 figure, you can have 1 table. If you are using, let us say 6 table, you can use 1 figure. Most journal. There is a flexibility there. Also, you should know when should I use a table to present the data, where should I use and not use table to present the data. See, if your data are too simple, for example, you are presenting the age and gender of the patient and control. This is too simple data to present in the table. And we have seen paper where the data of such simple kind are presented as in table, because obviously table occupies more space in the journal. So if suppose journal is giving space free of cost to you, obviously many journal now ask for payment, but forget about that. If the journal is giving you space free of cost, they will like to use that space logically. So don't put the table. Don't put the table for such simple data. Tables should be put where the data is too complex, there are too many variables, there are too many rows, there are too many columns, and it is difficult to present that data in a comprehensive manner, in an understandable manner, in a small space. So there you use table. Okay? Now, when to use figure? When you want precise data to be presented, tables are better. Like you want all the decimal and everything to be presented, tables are better. That is precisely presenting your data. But when you want to present an overview, a concept, then figures are better. Typically, we look at the figure in a short time to get an impression about your study, and we go to the table very carefully to see the minute details of the data. One more thing is that do not duplicate the data in the figure, table, and the text. Let us say if I presented the age and gender and demographic variable in a table, because my study is an epidemiological study, and where I found there are a lot of demographic variable, to present this in the form of text is too complex. So I use a table. Now, if you have given age and gender in the table, don't give it again in the text. There, what you write is the patients with, or the cases where or the patients were comparable to control in age and gender, then within bracket table 1. I don't present the data there because I have already presented that data in the table. Remember one more thing, that in the paper, abstract is a standalone section of the paper. The main paper is a standalone section of the paper. The tables are standalone section of the paper. The figures are standalone section of the paper. What does it mean? It means if I'm presenting something, I may copy your figure and present to use in my PowerPoint slide. So therefore, your table and figure should be self-explanatory. That means if I've used an unique thing which nobody else in the world has used earlier, and I've described this in my method, I will give a footnote in the table defining that, because I know my table may be copied by one of the presenter and he may be using this in the PowerPoint slide, and I've given a unique new entity's name which nobody else would understand. Similarly, if you have used abbreviation in the table, if you have used abbreviation in the figure, this must be given the footnote in the bottom. The reason is the abbreviation must be explained, otherwise we can't understand. So like in abstract, I'll give the abbreviation along with full form. Then in the main paper, introduction, I will give the abbreviation along with full form again. You know why? Many people will read the abstract, not the main paper. Also, many a time for reading the main paper, I have to pay. So therefore, I may not like to actually read the whole paper. I may be happy with the abstract, reading the abstract alone, and I want in the abstract abbreviation should be coming. On the other hand, if I have a full text paper and I know what is abstract, abstract is a just small part of the full text paper. So I want to read the paper from the introduction till the end. So therefore, I may not read the abstract at all. And in that case, I want the abbreviation to be defined in the main paper again. I told you, do not repeat information that you have given in the text again in the table, again in the figure, because you are unnecessarily wasting the space of the journal. We get many papers submitted to our journal where what they do is that they embed the table and the figure within the award file. You must not do that, because as an editor, this editor will understand this fellow is not a very professional writer. He may be a novice writer, and I have to be careful with his paper. The reason is why this is not done, I'll tell you. During typesetting, actually press people decide what should be the best place for the table. The table should be placed there where you are discussing that issue. Now, when you write a paper and you embed the table in a particular place, when the fellow does copy editing in the press, the same place may not be requiring the table. So therefore, table has to be put in the end of the paper. Some journal even wants a separate file containing the table. And what about figure? Same applies to the figure. That means figure will be given in the paper where it is needed during the copy editing or typesetting. Also, figure has an unique problem. If you embed the figure within the word, when they do copy editing, your figure may not be high resolution. That's why you should upload the figure as a JPEG file with more than 300 dpi resolution. Arrange the method section, arrange the result section into subheadings, because those people who are writing new, or in, for that matter, even us who have been writing already, but still you have to manage a small section rather than managing a big section. So if I put subheading at the beginning and then fill up you in sentences, accordingly it is better. Chronological order, I have already told, and use a consort chart. Like suppose I tell you, many people, what they do is that they also, we present our experience with pancreatic tuberculosis. Let us say there is a rare disease, pancreatic tuberculosis. This is tuberculosis of pancreas. And they say, we present our experience with pancreatic tuberculosis. over a 10-year period, and they present 6 patients. Now it doesn't mean anything to the reader. You know why? If they have investigated 1,000 patients and they got 6 patients, it is rare. I do not bother about it. See, in 1,000 is 0.6%. I may think that if I would miss those 0.6% pancreatic tuberculosis, maybe still I am not doing too bad. I may think, but obviously it is not ideal. Even 0.6% is important. On the other hand, if you have seen 100 patients and you got 6 pancreatic tuberculosis, this is 6%. So 0.6% and 6% has tremendous difference. So that's why you have to give a consort chart. How many patients did you screen to get these 6 patients? So the consort chart will tell who were screened, who were excluded, why did they get excluded, then who finally were analyzed or included in the study, so that we want to know the real life situation, how often this patient come and all those. Now this is one consort chart. Okay, the consort is consolidated standard of reporting trial. Now this was originally made for trial, but I tell you, now it is not only for trial. We want in everything consort chart type of chart, so that I know to recruit this many patients, how many did you screen? Result, you have to anticipate the pitfalls, so that if reviewer picks up something, your paper will be killed. But if you pick up that and then write in the discussion, then the reviewer and editor will be quite empathetic, because you'll say these authors are very mature, they know what they mean, they understand their own limitation. So therefore, adhere to the, and you anticipate the pitfall. Also look at the target journal. You must read the instruction to the author of that journal where you want to submit. Address people's sensitivity diplomatically. I'll show you this figure. So we, an Asian group, wanted to challenge the world concept of a disease. We, the Asian group, wanted to challenge the world concept about a disease. Now, when you do that, you have to understand, if you make a lot of noise, if you challenge openly, the editor will say, why to get into this trouble here? It is like one fellow or one group of fellow is trying to fight with another group of fellow. So obviously, editor will say, oh, this is not what I want to get into. But suppose if we want to address it very sensitively, what did we do? We said that disease is like an elephant. We said that disease is like an elephant. So we put an elephant. Now also we wanted to say we are the Asian. We are maybe something like 10 people from Asia or 20 people from Asia want to challenge this. So we the Asian challenge. So this is like political, you know. So you have to actually sensitively address the issue. So what did we do? On the top of the elephant, we gave this seat. We gave this. This happens only in Asia. Go outside Asia, to the best of my knowledge, they do not put this on the top of the elephant. So therefore, very sensitively, we spoke about Asian concept. So we are saying this is Asian concept because we have used an elephant. The disease is like elephant. World understand very little about it. And therefore, this is an elephant, but world understanding is like flies. And we, the Asians, are propagating this concept. So that's why we have used a symbol. And then each of the pathogenetic mechanism that was proposed earlier, we put a fly there. Now, this editor may not be too serious. He also knows that this is being presented in a very subtle manner. So it is acceptable. Maybe sometimes we may not go in such a great detail and understand what the authors are meaning, and the paper can get published. And yes, the paper was published. And after it is published, you can explain to people, if you like to, that this was our concept. So that's why address people's sensitivity diplomatically. Do not be too open like politics. Result rarely require reference. If a sentence is there in the result section that require reference, it probably belongs to another section. Obtain written permission for any figure or table taken from published work, including your own work. If you have published a work earlier somewhere, you have to take permission to use that again. Use graph to illustrate only major points, those that cannot be expressed in the text or tables. Describe the result but do not interpret. No interpretation is allowed in the result section. Carefully check for discordance in the data, because if there is a discordance in the data, then actually your paper may be killed. Because if somebody else picks up the discordance, and if there are too many such discordant data, what will happen is editor or reviewer will be doubtful about all the data that you are presenting. Because you'll say, oh, we picked up 4 discordant things in this paper. I don't know whether there are 40 also there inside. So better to reject it. So no discordance. So add up the number, see whether the number add up to the number that you mentioned, so that it is possible that you mention 40 patients, you add up their symptoms, it may come to 45. So you are presenting nausea, diarrhea, vomiting, you add up all those, it becomes 45, but your patient number was 40. So how did it become 45? This may be because one particular fellow had more than one symptom, or a group of fellow had more than one such symptom. Explain that there only. So discordance must be picked up. Some people keep on giving multiple number after decimal. Remember, in mathematics, 3 decimal, 4 decimal, 5 decimal may matter. But in biology, whether your number is 44.013, it doesn't matter to us. Because if you write 40.013 versus 45.028, actually it becomes a jargon while reading. But in biology, actually so much, I'll say, fineness is not required, because suppose your measurement may have error, it is good to round up. That's why often I like the data you give only 1 decimal, that means 40.1 or 40.7, or at most 2 decimal. Okay, so don't repeat after decimal. Discussion is interpretation of the result. And I tell you what I do is this. Look at this discussion. So what I do is that when I write the discussion, I read my result again. This is from one of our papers. Now here we are telling the present prospective study on a large sample of patients with COVID-19 from India showed that as high as 82% patients with COVID-19 were asymptomatic. 10.3% patients had GI symptoms. 25% of the symptomatic patients had GI symptom as the only manifestation. The presence of GI symptom was associated with the absence of contact history, presence of non-GI symptom, and comorbid illnesses on multivariate analysis. Patient with GI symptom had a comparable load of viral RNA as evidenced by similar CT values on reverse transcriptase polymerase chain reaction. Severe and critical illness occurred in 5% patients and less than 2% died. And the presence of GI symptom was associated with more severe disease and fatal outcome. So what I typically do, I think many people advise that you summarize your result in the first paragraph of the discussion. You know why? Because many readers actually read your title, read your abstract, and read your discussion. They do not read very carefully the method and the result. You know, who reads the method and the result? Those who are doing research on this subject. Those who are not doing research on this subject, they are not interested in the critical aspect of method and the critical things in the result. They are interested, what do this author want to say? And what do all these mean? This is what they are interested. So in the discussion in the first paragraph, we said what we want to say. And then in the next paragraphs, I'll discuss each of these that I mentioned here. So summarize important new finding, confine to your data and compare with other studies. Many discussion, what people do is they will bring history there, they will bring philosophy there, they will say first case of this disease was described in November 2019, and then you will say this probably began in the virology lab of Wuhan, and then they will say maybe it could be animal zoonotic disease, and all those are not required because your study is different and it doesn't have anything to do with all those history. So confine to your data and compare how your data are similar to other studies and discordant to the other studies. Explain the importance of the finding in a balanced and focused way. Do not be too passionate about your finding. Don't think that you have to be proved always right. It is not that whatever I found must be the fact. There cannot be anything else. No. Discuss limitation and implications. Unoriginal, predictable, and trivial result, if you put it, guarantee rejection. Like suppose we get paper, we'll say, for the first time, we are reporting chronic pancreatitis from so and so city of Kerala. What does it mean? It doesn't mean anything. Like you see, somebody must have described pancreatitis from India initially, then somebody went further, they describe in different state. Now they have described from Kerala. Now you say for the first time I am describing in a city of Kerala. So if the state of Kerala has chronic pancreatitis, why the city would not have? So this is unoriginal, this is predictable, this is trivial, and it will reject the paper. Say what you mean and mean what you say. So that means what you mean, you have to say that clearly, and you have to mean what you say. New ideas, novel or controversial finding need extra support. You got something very new, which was not described by anybody else in the literature. Then you have to bring in more and more papers to support your idea, more and more logic to support your idea, because what happens is there may not be many more paper on this issue. You may be the first in the world. In that case, you bring logic, you need bring biological explanation to support your idea, but be modest. Now, one of the most common problem that we find in the submitted paper are unsupported conclusion. Authors want to say something which actually they did not show in their data at all. Like you found something, let us say you found that obesity can be associated with non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. You found that people who are obese, this is a case control study, people who are obese, they have non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. People who are lean, they did not have non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. Let us say you found in an animal study, obese mice has different microbiota in their gut than lean mice. Now you go one step further and say, therefore we conclude that treating obesity will lead to treatment of, or will be successful in treating non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. Obviously, this has not been shown in your study. This is what is futuristic. You have not shown this, and this should not be in the conclusion. Okay, so key to the success are novelty, clarity, brevity, avoid verbosity. English should be good, avoid joining sentences. Short sentences should be written in active voice, divide into subsection. A picture conveys more than 1,000 words. Now, what I'll tell you is that title. It is a good practice to write the title after the end of the paper, because many people write a study of coronavirus disease, a study of GI symptom in coronavirus disease. Not a good title. You know why? The reason is many a time when we are doing a PubMed search, we read only the title. So if you say a study of coronavirus disease, GI symptom in coronavirus disease, it doesn't convey much. On the other hand, if I say a, coronavirus disease or GI symptom in patient with coronavirus disease is associated with severe COVID-19 and fatal outcome, a prospective study. So what we said is presence of GI symptom in patient with COVID-19 is associated with severe disease and fatal outcome, a prospective study. Now, what happened is if I'm going through the PubMed and I found this title, reading the title, I know. What does it mean? Maybe I have seen another 10 titles, all are retrospective, and this is the first prospective study. Do not put a query in the title. Putting query in the title is a poor thing because you had this question when you are designing this study in the method stage. Now you know the answer. So why don't you give the answer to me so that by reading only the title, I know the answer. You are not writing a literary piece where you want to keep things hidden so that the fellow sits through the movie and watches the whole movie. Hello, 5 minutes class 11. Now, keywords should be picked up from this medical subject heading book. People give keyword as they would like. No, this is not the case. Keywords should be picked up from this book. This is called MESH word, medical subject heading. Today, you do not need to go to the library to actually search for this book. You will get everything in the net. Number two, I'll tell you, people give keyword which is there already in title. Let us say in the title you mention coronavirus disease 19. Now in the keyword also you are putting coronavirus disease 19. This is wrong. You know why keywords are given? Keywords are searching word. Keywords are searching word. Journal publishes paper and they want citation. Citation make them enriched. Journal becomes superior by citation. So what they do is that, let us say, if you do a study, GI symptom predict outcome of coronavirus disease 19. This is your paper. Now GI symptom is already there. Don't put that in keyword. Coronavirus disease 19 is already there. Don't put that keyword. Because if I do a PubMed search using GI symptom, this paper is automatically going to come. If I do a PubMed search with coronavirus disease 19, this paper is going to come because this is there in the title. I want more word outside the title so that the probability of this article coming into the search engine becomes greater. So what we will do is that we'll say SARS-CoV-2 because SARS-CoV-2 is not there in the title. I'll say pandemic because pandemic is not there in the title. I will say remdesivir, it is not there in the title. I'll say hydroxychloroquine, it is not there in the title. I'll say, let us say diarrhea. You have talked about GI symptom, but in the title you did not mention diarrhea. So I'll put diarrhea. And like our Indian Journal of Gastroenterology, we used to have 5 to 6 keywords. Now we want 10 keywords. You know why? More keyword means my journal or my articles will get more citation in the future. So each of these has something behind. Be careful with abbreviation. I'm telling you repeatedly, abbreviation whenever is being used, it must be accompanied by its full form when used for the first time. For example, here, this is by the way, BTW, by the way. Okay? So if somebody write like this, BTW, and nowhere in the paper I can find BTW, for me it becomes so difficult. What does this BTW mean? So no abbreviation, not a single. Even I don't use PCR as an abbreviation. though it is a standard abbreviation, because my article may be read by non-medical people. So why should I write PCR? I'll say polymerase chain reaction within bracket PCR. Okay. Also, when you use abbreviation, full form should be given when used first time in the abstract. Again, give the full form when used for the first time in the bullet point section. Many journals now want bullet point. Now then again use the introduction full form. Give the full form below the table. Give the full form in the figure legend. You know why? These are all standalone section of the paper. Use a template. Typically what I do is that if I have written one paper, I just copy that paper. After copying that paper, I delete all the sections except these headings. Headings are the title, the author name, the institute address, short title, then let us say acknowledgement, let us say conflict of interest, let us say author's contribution, and then I keep on adding things there so that my formatting work reduces. Also, I don't actually forget to write something. Like let us say you did not write conflict of interest. Now most journal will actually send the paper from the editorial office itself. Editor will not even see that paper. Are you trying to underplay something? This is dangerous. Like let us say you have done a retrospective study and you are nowhere saying it is prospective or retrospective. If the editor or reviewer picks it up, he will not be very kind to you, because if you are trying to underplay something in your writing, if somebody has picked up one thing, I don't know how many others are there which are not picked up. For example, we see a lot of laboratory scientists, they do not clearly say what is the number of animals they used. This is trying to hide something, and I have to really dig through the paper to know how many animals were actually used. Now, this is an example of picture conveying more than 1,000 words. So look at this. A good picture attracts the attention of the reviewer, of the editor. Therefore, learn making good graphs, good picture. Okay? Plagiarism must be avoided. Plagiarism means copying somebody else's sentences. And you will say how the person will know. The person will know because in each of the journal, we have now an inbuilt system called Authenticate. Authenticate will show line by line where from you have copied. So I can go to even that source from Authenticate alone without reading that paper. It will give, the moment you submit an article, you can see, today I saw one paper, 61% similarity with another paper. Colleague treatment is very, very important. So that's why you have to create an environment. You know, there are difficulties everywhere. We know all these, but forget about those difficulties. You should make your group who are similar minded. In no institute in the world, researchers are the majority. In none of the institute in the world, majority are researchers. Rather, researchers are minority in any institute. Therefore, make friendship with researcher so that you can receive a colleague treatment. Somebody who has not ever read your paper, is not involved with your paper, is not an author of that paper, is the one who can pick up your mistake better. And then once you are ready, you put to the journal. There it comes editor, associate editor, reviewer, and all those. Now I end here. Any question I'll take up. Now let me tell you, we will have one session on editorial process later. What does the journal do? How does it process? But let me tell here, a journey of 1,000 miles must begin with a single step. And passion is the most important. Those who are young people, I tell you, get into the passion, get into this addiction. This will be making your future. Thank you so much.